Hi, did you know that the Olympic Games are the largest, highest profile, and most expensive mega event hosted by cities and nations around the world? And obviously, this big of an event has a major impact on society, and there are so many moving parts to this and how it goes on. The word impact in this case can have a variety of meanings because there are so many different effects that the Olympics have on societies around the world. This topic is very significant because people don't realize how much of an impact the Olympic Games have on societies around the world and how much of an impact it actually has on people specifically. And personally, I have watched the Olympics throughout since I can even remember because I've always been involved in sports. I love to watch all of them. And I really love to root on my nation, which is the United States, which is this here. I mean, growing up, I loved watching the USA, and I always be rooting for them. And this just shows, like, I got this a while ago. It's like one of my first shirts. So yeah. And what we're going to be talking about for this is the first major effect of that has a major impact on society is the basic history of the Olympics because it dates back far. So it's really important to know where the Olympics where the roots are. And the second part is the very complex financial situation that is entailed in the Olympics because there is a lot of money involved. And the third one is the wide variety of participating nations because there are so many countries and nations around the world that participate in the Olympics today. These 3 points are some of the main aspects of Olympics that play an impact on society. As I said, the first one is the history, how it all started. And this is very important because first of all, it began in the 8th century BC in Greece, according to Jill M. Gear, which you probably don't even know when that is. I don't know when that is, but that dates back very far, and those were called they're known as the ancient games, and they included events like running, long jump, javelin, shot put, boxing, and equestrian events, which today's games, they include pretty much anything you can think of, any common sport, any very weird event, speed walking, stuff like that. Anything you can think of, they have in today's Olympics. So it's obviously changed quite a bit. And as it's said by Alison Steinbeck in the Harvard International Review, modern Olympics often have been more about political agendas than cooperation and cultural exchange, which is what it's meant to be about, not about all the politics and all that, which is why it's become much more of an impact on society in that case and not in the positive case. And the history of this had an impact on society because it started traditions, brought nations together. Cities would call a timeout on conflicts. It would almost bring peace to like a country and bring them all into one to root for their nation. And throughout this, heroes were created for anyone who did well in the Olympics, and it really just brought around a good, positive environment for each nation whenever they rolled around. And there's been an impact ever since the beginning and it's gotten more complicated over time, especially when it comes to the financial situation of things. First off, according to three professors at the University of Oxford, average sports-related costs of hosting the Olympics are almost $12 billion, and non-sports related costs are several times that. As you can see, this amount of money obviously exceeds the budget that they're looking for because of stadiums, hotels, transportation, and it may seem like this is a little overboard, but it really does have to cost this much for it to be effective in a host city. There's so many outcomes from this amount of cost, and there's negative ones that could leave nations in financial crises, like it did back when it was in Rio in 2016. They are still going through a lot of financial issues, but there are a lot of positive outcomes too. There's a lot more money flow coming in from people who come and watch the Olympics for real, and all of the eyes are on that host city or nation, which gives them a lot of viewership, a lot of more popularity, and people are all on that, so it becomes a lot better. And lastly, I think cities should think twice before becoming a host city for the Olympics because it is very risky. It could leave you in a financial crisis, could do that. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with putting on the Olympic Games. Obviously, the money situation is very controversial, but one thing that is certain is participation of nations all around the world because there are so many that participate. Back then, it started with only a few participants who were just around in the area and like they were popular at that time. But now, in today's Olympics, over 200 nations participate today. And it's so easy for one nation to stand out and gain fans, and everyone comes and watches them. Also, it helps get their name out there. People, not just like the nation as a whole, but also people who are on their nation's teams, they get their word out and gets their eyes all on them, and it just gets them out there. According to Gilliam Gear, through the Olympic Games, the people of the world are able to see what is possible when socio and economic, political, gender, and racial barriers just don't exist. Obviously, it's nice to know this because whenever the Olympic Games are on, nothing else matters. It's just all about the country rooting for your nation, and it's not about all those barriers. It's all that controversy. It's just all fun and positive stuff. And as children of all ages, as people grow up with Olympics, they grow up around the world and are exposed to new nations, countries that I didn't even know existed, which gives them a lot more knowledge on the world. All three of these points, they have a major impact on the society, whether it's here, whether it's in China, whether it's wherever in the world. And overall, my purpose in writing this speech was to inform you on how the Olympics impact society. First, we talked about the history of the Olympics, then we talked about the financial situation, then we talked about the wide variety of participating nations that all played effect. Lastly, Olympics continue to grow, as will the societal impact, so it is important to gain knowledge on this topic now so you know in the future.